Hello again everybody. I feel like a bit of a late arrival at this year's GGBO party. What's delayed me is I had to finish a guitar for a customer which was all black, and the finishing process just took forever. It was very difficult. But anyway, it's done now. The guitar's delivered, and I think the customer's very happy with it. And various other bits of non-lutherie life have got in the way and delayed me. But anyway, I'm here now and ready to begin. I've chosen the wood, which I'll show you in a minute, for my GGBO 22 guitar. It's going to be a Parlour guitar, and it'll be, I've made a couple of Parlours before. This is the latest one. The first one has already gone to a customer. This one is rosewood and cedar with a slotted headstock, as you can see, curly maple bindings, or flame maple actually, and this gives you a general idea of the size and shape of the guitar I'll do this year. I won't do a slotted headstock, I'll do a traditional, I think, non-slotted headstock. And as you'll see, the woods I've chosen will make it a blonde guitar, very largely blonde, with other bits and pieces, but which I'll show you now. We'll go to the bench and I'll show you the wood I've picked out. So here are all the main parts of the guitar. Starting at the back, there's just a few templates. This is obviously the half body template. I'm not going to do a cutaway on this guitar. I don't think on a Parlour it would look right. So this is the half body template, headstock template. As I said, I'm going to do a normal unslotted headstock. This is another template for the neck. Here we have some bracewood, which I haven't yet split into braces. The back and sides are going to be this lovely piece of rippled ash. And you can see there's some really nice flame in the sides. And I used offcuts of the back glued together to make the fingerboard. I discovered that the ash wood is just about as hard as maple, so I think it'll be fine to use as a fingerboard. And because I had to glue two thicknesses together to get the thickness needed for a fingerboard, I'm going, and you can see a glue line here if you look carefully. I'm going to bind the fingerboard to hide that. So I've made up some foam maple with a black veneer. So that will be used to bind the side of the fingerboard and hide that glue joint. And then the normal bindings of the guitar around the outside of the body are just more flame maple with a small black veneer at the bottom. I've got some piece of maple here for the neck, and then the top of the guitar is German spruce. You can see I've drawn the shape on and the rough, approximate bracing pattern on the back. I've got some very thin little bits of plywood veneer here, which will be useful because I think I'm going to do a sound port on this guitar, so I would use these to reinforce the inside of the upper bout where I cut the sound port through. The bridge is going to be this piece of European walnut, which is it has a rather nice, rather lucky curve in it, which just more or less matches the curve of my bridge shape, which I thought I could use. And then this gorgeous piece of burl walnut I'm going to use at least for the rosette and possibly also for the head plate. But actually I've got other options for the head plate because I used more side offcuts to make head plate blanks. So I might decide to use one of these instead. You can see I don't know if it's picked up on the camera, but you can see there's some nice flame in the wood. So I haven't decided yet. That and other small decisions still to be made, including some of the decorative stuff. But in general, that's more or less the way the thing is going to look. And so I'm keen to get started. So that was it for the wood. Having decided on the basic design of the guitar, and in particular the scale length, which actually I can set to be anything I want. I'm not restricted to the standard sets. You'll see how that works later. But having decided that scale length, the first thing I do when I've got a fingerboard is to mark up and then saw out the fret slots, including a 0 fret. And then I have a jig which I've developed to measure the nut and saddle compensation needed for the particular strings that I plan to put on the guitar, and the action, the playing action that either the customer would like or which I choose to set up if the guitar isn't being made for anybody in particular. So that's the next thing you'll see. That's my fret sawing jig, and I have an Excel sheet which I'm going to make a separate video about, I think, because I use Excel quite a bit in the beginning of my process, and I think it warrants a separate video all by itself. But anyway, for the purposes of sawing the fret slots, I just use a list of the calculated fret distances, so only one column of this is what I'm going to be interested in when I get round to sawing the frets, which will be the next thing. So at this stage I'm just marking it very roughly in pencil to avoid later sawing in the wrong place, because with the jig I've got, it's very easy to be kind of millimetre wise and centimetre foolish, as it were. It's easy to make a mistake, let's put it that way. So having the pencil mark in place just helps you avoid catastrophe. So I'm just marking from this yellow column all the fret distances from the nut in the nominal position. Okay, so that's all the fret positions marked. Here is where the sound hole will come. That's the final actual fret, which is fret 19. So I'll eventually lose this end of the fingerboard. So I'll strike the lines at right angles to the centre line across, and then I'll be ready to saw the fret slots. Here's my fret sawing jig, which, like a lot of my good ideas, I shamelessly stole from the Totnes School of Guitar Making, where I first learnt to build a guitar. They had a similar jig, and I just copied it when I got home. So basically it's there's a long bed here, long enough for a bass fingerboard, and the fingerboard is stuck down to here either with screws, or more recently I've been using the masking tape super glue trick to anchor the board. And then here is where the fret saw goes. I say fret saw, the saw for using or for sawing frets. There are skateboard bearings here, spaced out by washers, and the back of the saw engages here to stop it going too deep. And then this saw assembly is basically a carriage which can move up and down the fretboard by turning the handle. So underneath there is just a piece of threaded rod which goes the length of the jig, and turning this handle moves the carriage up and down the rod. And the placement, the exact position, is measured along this scale here, but I've got a vernier scale here as well, which means theoretically I've got an accuracy of 0.1 millimeters, which is fine for a fretboard. So I can zero it by winding it down till the zero on the vernier scale matches the end of the ruler. So then I saw the nut position or zero fret, wind forward to the next fret position, lining up the correct number on the vernier scale to give the accuracy to the nearest 0.1 of a millimeter. Saw the next fret, and so on all the way up the fretboard. I have to read the scale upside down because rather stupidly I didn't think it through, and because of the way my bench is set up, the handle has to be on the right hand end, but I put the ruler as if I was using it left-handed. So everything I have to read upside down, but I'm used to doing it, and it's not a problem in practice. So now the fretboard is firmly stuck down with masking tape and super glue. The nominal nut position or zero fret is lined up with the 0 point on the ruler and the vernier gauge, and the other pencil marked fret positions will just stop me making any gross errors when I wind forward, because when you're concentrating on getting the 0.1 millimeter correct, you can quite easily be on the wrong millimeter to start with, and the pencil lines will just stop that happening. So my first fret position is at 35.6, so I line it up roughly so the zero on the vernier goes past the 35 millimeters, and then I line it up so that the 6 on the vernier scale is exactly lined up with a millimeter mark, and the ones either side should be just inside their respective millimeter marks, and then I know it's bang on 35.6, and it's the same for all the other measurements. Second fret is at 69.3, so the zero now is just past the 69, and I line up the 3 on the vernier scale to a millimeter mark, and the 4 and the 2 are just inside their closest millimeter mark. No, wrong. There we go. So now it's on 69.3 millimeters for the second fret. Now all the fret slots are sawn, the next thing I'll do is mount it on my Nasher jig, which will enable me to measure the amount of nut and saddle compensation for the strings which I plan to use. And the end result of that will be that the nut will be placed slightly forward of its nominal position, which is here. So I'll end up sawing the fretboard probably a couple of millimeters, something like that, forward of where this zero fret slot is. And I also incidentally have to trim a bit off the sides because this is a full width fretboard and I'm going to bind it, so I need to take the thickness of the binding off each side, but I wanted to saw the fret slots at full width just because it makes a tidier result when I take the fretboard down after the fret slots are sawn. So that's it for this video. I wanted to try and keep things interesting by showing something different from last year, and in the next video I'll show you my Nasher jig, which is how I determine the final nut position and also the compensation needed at the saddle end. And so until then, goodbye for now.